All right, we already talked a little bit, but this is the first day of the semester. Please do check and see that we have a Moodle page. I have published the Moodle page, the image that goes along with our Moodle page as its heading is by Wassily Kandinsky, a very famous modernist artist. Something that you notice and something I wish for you to keep in mind the entirety of this course is that part of modernism is an eschewing of traditional forms. Very different from, say, Renaissance art, the art that people sometimes call real, right? That really emphasizes what is called verisimilitude. Verisimilitude means similarity to the truth. Verisimilitude, like vera or verum, true in Latin, and simile, like the word simile we have, which means like, similar. But do notice this. So this is going to be a bit of a crazy course, a little bit all over the place. And if you've looked at the reading list, you see works like Don Quixote, which literally features a crazy protagonist, you're starting to get a little bit of an idea what it is we're going to go through. All right, do note that I've already populated the first topic note, or the first week, as it were, with several documents. The syllabus, this is our syllabus, very important document right there. I'll go through that today. You'll see as we go through the syllabus that your homework tonight is not to read our first text, though I would highly recommend that you get started reading it. It is one of our 3 very long books. We have very long books in this class and very long readings. So you can expect to be doing something like 6 hours of reading a week. If you don't, the pop quizzes will hit you hard and the essays will hit you hard. And I'll go over that in the syllabus, but a big problem with not doing the reading, especially if you're also not making the class, is that sometimes you'll make points that are embarrassing and really lower the level of your essay. For example, you might take Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain and misattribute a quote about the character you are making an argument for to a different character. Think about that. You're making, say, you're writing a 5-page paper, you have like maybe 4 or 5 body paragraphs, and one of the 4 or 5 legs of your argument is based on an error. That is the sort of mistake that really kills grades in writing. I mean, how could you expect to get an A with such a mistake? How a B? Have you really made a good point? Have you even demonstrated that you've done the reading? These are, you can see how your grade sort of collapses on its extremely weak foundation in those cases. I'm going to do that about 50 more times. So maybe keep a count if you want to. Sometimes I'm bouncing into things. Sometimes I will hit things because I'm thinking, I'm in my head. But I think this is something I'm going to get stuck on many, many times. So perhaps this is going to be my bête noire. Does anybody know that expression, French? It means your black beast. It's the thing that gets your goat, as it were, the thing that just really annoys you. Like a black spot on your white shirt you didn't know was there. Hopefully I don't have any of those. In any case, your homework for tonight. Look through that. Make sure that you can log into Moodle. Make sure that you can log into your email. Make sure you're not logged out of everything. Make sure that you have your dorm and that you're enrolled in the right courses and that your life's not a total a total disaster right now. Or if it is, rein it back in and pull it together as much as you possibly can so that you can focus on things like this course and my Moodle page and what's on it and read and absorb it. So the first thing I want you to read is go through an MLA paper. This is the formatting that we use. Are we writing an essay the first day of class? No. But you are writing a short essay in the first month of class as well as potentially writing an outline. This is a literally perfect resource for seeing how to write an MLA essay. This will tell you how to write the heading, where to put the page number, how to put in-text citations, how to put final citations on a works cited page. You'll notice it even tells you works cited, not bibliography. We'll talk about this more, but something I should tell to you is that I am a technical reader of writing. I care whether you write, whether you adhere to the technical requirements of the Modern Language Association style sheet. You may have written an APA, American Psychological Association or Chicago before. This is not so different from those, but this is the standard format for American American literature writing, not the standard for Anglo in general, though. The Brits and the Aussies use a slightly different format, which is a little bit tougher, lots of footnotes. Though not all of them. In any case, I want you to review this and plan on reviewing it again. Something that students often do not take seriously to their own detriments are maintaining the formal requirements of formal writing. Often students say, what's the point? I don't need this citation to be perfect. Professor knows where it comes from. I'll say, no, I don't. I don't know whether you have the right book or not. Often students don't. I'll tell you exactly which book to use. Probably half of you will not get it. And so I don't know which book you're using. I don't know whether you're using the right book. I don't know whether the online source that you possibly use is even a book. I've had people turn in grade savers and cite it in the bibliography. Like that wasn't something that gets you hit with plagiarism charges by FAA. By the way, don't plagiarize or use AI. You'll get sent to FAA. Very easy for me to just, it's a very simple form. And then you get sent to FAA. I don't know if you've been sent there before, and they will review your work, and they're very diligent. You do not want to be put under an administrative process. You would much prefer to just do the work of the course, do your best, and move on. So don't get caught. Don't put yourself in a position where you have to think about doing something like that too, because you may open a can of worms that you cannot close again. And so wanting the best for you, I'd love for you to do the course correctly, not to plagiarize, not to use ChatGPT in order to write your outline, to write your work. It's very obvious when something's written by AI. By the way, I could tell you the many, many, many cues that AI gives based on the trainings that we're forced to go through now. But that said, if I were a doctor, a real doctor, I guess one might say, and you were a patient and you had an issue, and you gave me a doll to examine rather than you, would I be able to fix your issue? No, the point of being in this course is to learn how to read and to write at a professional level. And you'll soon see what the professional level is. When I edit your writing, you will see more writing on your writing than you have ever seen before. You will think that I have laser eyes because of the things I can see, because I actually read. I focus with my lynx eyes on what it is you say. As a professional, as an expert, I see differently from a non-expert. In fact, we know this, by the way. If you read The Neuroscience of Expertise, see that people's brains develop as they become experts. So literally, you cannot see like how an expert sees, so you have no idea what is important and what is unimportant at this point, except for based on sort of listening to what I have to say. So what I'm saying is that make sure that you get your format nailed down. Often students get better and better and better at the formatting as the year goes on. You will have 3 attempts. And also note that it is not in your best interest to plagiarize, which means to use other people's thoughts from online or to use AI to generate the thought. I'll tell you one reason why. When you are thinking up your own thoughts, when you're summarizing what has happened for yourself, that is an act of thinking. When you have something else summarized for you, you have not gone through the exercise of thinking for yourself. This doesn't make you a very good citizen of a democracy. You can't think for yourself. What sort of value are you supposed to add to the public discourse? B, you are not doing the assignment. So why should you get credit for it? The assignment is think up something, express it, and make sure that you express it in the most technical way you can so that it looks professional. That is what a literature or an English or a writing course at LSU is attempting to teach you how to do. So you're like, what is a 2000 literature course? Why do I have to go to this? It's like going to PE in high school. It's like something you have to do, but don't necessarily see much value in doing. Well, that is the value of the course. Obviously, it is a requirement. That's why almost everybody's here. But I do wish to fulfill that requirement insofar as you are taking your 2000 level experience with me. And I wish for you to be as successful as possible. Again, even though I have a fairly normative scale and lots of A's, or excuse me, some A's, some B's, some C's, sometimes other grades too, when they're truly warranted, I would give you all A's if you all performed. I have nothing against giving A's. I would love for you to strive for the A. But again, this is a course where you must strive for the A, and is not a gimme, as it were. Okay, so note that I want you to read this tonight. I'd also like you to read the paper topics and rubric. Cool. Close. I've already got this up there. Please do read it. I went through the trouble of writing all of this for you, also generating prompts for you. I don't require that you generate your own prompts. You notice that they're all very scaffolded. Tough essay questions are questions that are just a simple question. What is existentialism? Define insanity in Don Quixote. That would be like a 4,000 level question, where I would expect you to bring a lot of background knowledge. I don't expect that here. So I give you tons of scaffolding and even tell you things like, do not use a non-scholarly definition of modernism. Do you know how many of you are probably going to still give me a dictionary definition, even though I tell you explicitly that that's not allowed after sending me an email 3 hours before it was due? Probably a few of you. I'll say the same thing then. It's not scholarly, you're going to lose points. But I do tell you what it is that I want and what it is that you need in order to get an A in this class, or an A on this assignment. So check the prompts. I would also check the common errors. These are common errors based on years and years now of grading college level writing. I'll say also just a little bit about me, as I was once a high school teacher even, so you might know from that background that I do actually like students. I do care about young people. I just happen to be scholarly in terms of my aptitude. And so I have been drawn into the scholarly profession. But do review this. If you have questions, send me an email, talk to me after class. Oftentimes successful students are communicative with me, not in ways like, will you change this grade? Or what did I miss in class today? But more like, Mr. Schmidt, I've been thinking about this topic, and is this a good way to go about this? And then we talk a little bit about the subject, about the content of the course. Checking in with me about things like those it tends to help you improve your writing and your score in the class. But do take a look at all of this. One thing I will note is that major errors like logical contradictions, misattributions, like I said earlier, and they warrant larger reductions than the rubric even says. So you are talking about, if you're making a point about Don Quixote, but his sidekick Sancho is the one that said the things that you claim to say, you shouldn't expect to do very well on the essay. That's very bad reading, very poor formal writing. All right, cool. And then we've got our first two lectures already here. I highly recommend that you download and review these, generally after class, but maybe even before, because even though I have these lectures, they've got nice art, things like them, I use them as, I touch base on them, but I do not base my lectures on them. I have been lecturing for quite a bit of time, and I'm often very much thinking about what I wish to lecture on. And so every semester, lectures are different. And you can even check this. I've got my lectures from the year before. I've got my lectures from last semester, and I'll have lectures from this semester as well. You will note if you take the time to go through any of these, that the course looks different almost every year because my thinking continues to develop on this, which is perhaps the difference between a high school level course and a college level course, that this is active living knowledge that I'm giving to you, not dead textbook knowledge that has been produced by another member of my own field. All right, so let's take a look at the syllabus itself. I've gone through and highlighted what I think is most important in yellow. So if you're just going to give a quick cursory glance through here, make sure that you're looking at the yellow. Note that we've got a schedule here. The schedule will probably not change. Note that we've got stuff about Title IX and sexual misconduct. We've probably seen on all of your syllabi. We've got stuff on students with disabilities, have resources available to you. There's an electronics policy, an official attendance policy. I'll mention that a lot of people get hung up on that in their lives. There are the grades. Here are the assignments. They're important. And here are the required Also, here is where we are. We did a good job of making it here. I don't think we're going to get moved. And this is actually a pretty nice room. A lot of light in it. Second floor, not the basement. You can, I guess I'm looking out at it, but you can see the stadium over there from our very disappointing team. But I would say the whole SEC was disappointing this year. I mean, Texas and UGA. You hear UGA's quarterback's going to Miami now too? Makes sense to me. He was probably going to get beaten out by this new guy who's looking very good. So, maybe a Jalen Hurts and Tua sort of situation. Can you follow that? Alabama fans, yeah, or not Alabama fans, just follow them on with them. It was nice seeing them not do that well this year. Number 11 ranked and got kicked out of the top 12. Wonderful stuff. All right, let's talk a little bit about what is on these 5 or 6 pages, 8 pages. Ooh, it's getting there. Course description. Over the course of the semester, we will be reading texts which have had a marked impact on world literature. We will focus on masterpieces specifically, and we will read epics from widely differing cultures, languages, and times. The course will focus on the themes of intertextuality, cultural transmission, and what is common or universal to the human condition. Strange thing to claim, regardless of place and time. Specific skills which one will improve include close reading, analytical writing, basic research and database use, and argumentative logic. Okay, this is very important. These are your required texts. I would recommend getting all of them now. You can get them from Amazon or from the bookstore or from various dark libraries, depending on your ethical proclivities. I say this every semester, and about half of my students listen, about half of my students disregard what it is I have to say. In fact, I have had multiple times now, students email me the day before papers are due and say, hey, is this source okay? It doesn't have page numbers. I can't cite from it. That's okay, right? It's like, well, no, that's plagiarism, and that'll get you sent to SAA. You should have planned a lot better, given the fact that I give you a month between every single essay. Also, if you get sick the day before, unfortunately, because I structured this course so well and so strictly, you can get sick the day before an essay is due. But the 29 days before your sickness kicked in, I will have expected you to put in the work so that you can convalesce as well as turn things in on time. But I give you the ISBN number of all of these editions. Please get the appropriate editions. Multiple reasons why. I generally quote from a single edition, though this is not always true. I occasionally quote from a second edition of Don Quixote. So not always true, but often true. Second reason is this. All of the literature that we are reading, except for a nice Irish work called Ulysses, which was written in English, and a nice English work named Mrs. Dalloway. Those were written in English, but all of the other works, the Faust, Notes from Underground, The Magic Mountain, are translated. Because they are translated and because they are famous, each of these books has manifold translations, multiple translations. Some of these translations are from a long time ago. Older translations are usually often translated according to differing standards and into older versions of English. And so an early 20th century translation of Dostoevsky, though some are the best, the Constance Garnett ones, could be much harder to understand than what I assign. I will tell you from experience that I have assigned to you the translations that are easiest to read and quote from. Now, if you don't intend to do any of the reading, you might not see any good reason for getting these books, but I'll say that even if you don't intend to do the reading, quoting from these texts will be easiest as well, because I will often quote myself from them and give you in my slides very useful quotes that you might use yourself, you might mine for yourselves. Just to give you a visual aid, because I know not every student buys all 5 books, and these are not biology textbooks or calculus textbooks, by the way. These are not textbooks, cost $200. These are books you should have on your bookshelves for the rest of your lives and will impress people because they're impressive books. But this is, you can tell that this has been through some things. I've opened this book before. Goodness. Looks like it's got some water damage, some notes all around it too. My goodness. The water damage, I think, actually came from when I was flying with it. And I was going from Scotland to Amsterdam through the worst storm that they had ever recorded. Ever. It was last summer. It's such a terrible storm that the turbulence was so bad that nobody was praying to their various gods because everybody felt so bad and was so nauseous that the pain overwhelmed our fear. And when we touched down, I had this in my checked bag. It was raining so hard that the rain totally soaked my baggage, went through it, soaked this book. And this is a good reason to keep books, and have books. They become artifacts. They carry memories. They carry experiences of who you are and who you've been throughout time. Also, this happens to be a pretty nicely bound book. And just a couple things to know about what makes a book nice is having a good, strong spine makes a book nice so that you can actually sit with it open. Not every book does that. Notice that it's not white. It's off-white. Off-white is easier on your eyes. It's literally easier to look at. Something you may not know, but have probably experienced is that your eyes are muscles and your eyes can be weak. So when you read over and over, and you can tell the difference, but having been a high school teacher, you can tell the difference between someone who's staring at something and someone who's actively reading. You can tell the difference between someone who's thinking sometimes too, but depending on where they're looking, or whether they're imagining or not. But this is a well-bound, nice book. It doesn't take the sentences all the way to the edge of the page. It's a fine thing. It's a work of art. And I highly recommend that you acquire this, the physical copy, if you can. It probably won't cost you more than $8. You might find it for 99 cents. Use Goodreads. If you're interested in asking about various used bookstores online, ask me. Some of them are really cheap. Some of them are cheaper than Amazon. And especially with these books that are often called classics. So we'll talk about whether in fact they are classics on Wednesday. You can find them for fairly cheap. Have any of you already acquired Don Quixote at the bookstore? Okay, probably smart. But once you have, tell me how much they're selling it for there. Not always the least expensive amount, not to work against my employer and making money. But this is my screed about why you should buy the actual editions and translations that I have suggested. If you end up getting an electronic copy instead of a physical copy, that's much better than just getting a random copy that is easy to acquire. All right. There's also some secondary literature that I include here. This is most important when you're writing your essays. You may want to read the secondary literature in order to get a better idea what's happening in the text and to see what some other scholarly ideas about the text are, and to mine the secondary literature for quotations that you wish to include in your own writing. And so these are 7 pieces that can be useful to you. All right. Grading. This is perhaps the most important. This course does not have a ton of grades. This should scare you a little bit because it's scary. It means every single assignment is high stakes. It means every single assignment matters a ton. And so keep that in mind. I always keep that in mind. It's like we're down here near the bayou. It's like you're living down the bayou, as we say here, as the Cajuns say here. And I'm not myself a Cajun, I'm a Californian. And yes, I live in San Diego, so to my poor friends in LA. But it is as if there is an alligator looming. It will not necessarily eat you, but it's definitely close. So you don't want to lose track of it. That's how these grades are. So attendance and participation. I once did not have an attendance grade at LSU, but I found the students here, though often very gifted and disciplined, did not do well with the lack of an attendance policy. In fact, many of them stopped coming. Many of them lost track of the works we were on. Many of them then started turning in terrible work. And some of my students did worse than any students I've ever had when I did not have an attendance policy. So though I do feel that that works against your autonomy and against the notion of what a college is, it's all by choice. It's not a state requirement that you be in this classroom. You had to earn entrance here, and you've chosen, in fact, this class. Perhaps your college counselor put in this class, but you can choose to be in a different one if you would like to. But I found that an attendance requirement is necessary at this institution and that it will help you. You need to be in this class every single day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, unless I give you the class off, which I do several times during the course of the semester. You need to be here thinking about this literature. You need to be here, especially if you're not doing the reading, so that you have some idea of what's going on. But really, you need to be doing the reading, which is very difficult, in these very difficult masterpieces, and then hearing what I'm saying and asking me questions. I didn't understand this. What about this? Was this the case? That's how you really get into the course, how you bite into the meat or the not meat, the vegan meat. I can't believe it's not meat of the course, depending on your dietary restrictions. That said, I take attendance extremely seriously. Make sure you are here. Other reason you want to make sure you are here. LSU has an official attendance policy. If you miss 3 classes with unexcused absences, every subsequent class that you miss, and I hate to read this off like some sort of bailiff or parole officer, will reduce your final grade, not just the grade on an assignment, by 1 grade segment each day you miss. So if you miss 4 days and you've got an A+, you're down to an A. Miss 5, you're down to an A-. Miss 6, you're down to a B+. But probably if you're missing lots of days, you're already at, like, say, a B at best, let's say. So you miss 5 days, down to B-, you're down to C+. All you did was miss 5 days. But though with the coming of COVID, certain work practices have changed, something you may have noticed if you really watch the news is that certain work practices have changed back. So what happened during COVID? Lots of remote working options kicked in. But over the last year, if you've followed industries, finance, technology, what has happened? Everybody's been brought back to work 5 days in the office, whether you're working in technology, finance, banking, all of it. And so missing 5 days of a class that meets 3 days a week is like missing almost an entire 2 weeks of work. Often that is the standard for first jobs in careers. 2 weeks vacation. Nowadays, sometimes 5 or 6, depending on the job. But just to miss 2 weeks, of work is huge. And so I expect you to be here. Being here is important, and I will produce for you every time I am here that which I can produce. Okay, a couple things about this. I will also give pop quizzes. You need to stay up on the reading. I give long readings. Check the syllabus, sometimes 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 pages. It's literature, so it's not as slow going as reading philosophy or theology or hard science. No, it takes time. So you need to find somewhere that you plan to be doing this reading every week. And you find a good chair in the LSU library or in the Memorial Library or in your apartment or a nice coffee shop, wherever it is you think you can get reading done. Some nice noise canceling headphones with something on that doesn't have a bunch of vocals, and be planning to do some reading because these pop quizzes will pop up on you. And again, note that if you're getting 0 out of 5, 0 out of 5, 0 out of 5 on pop quizzes, and then I'm grading your essay, and it seems like you don't really know what you're talking about, and then I glance over and note that about your pop quizzes, it's not going to look like you're really putting the work in. It's going to be a lot harder for me to give you the benefit of the doubt. And remember, I'm always trying to give you the benefit of the doubt. Oh, your grandma died? I get it. Very terrible. You developed tuberculosis last night? Awful. Let me see what I can do. I am fair and caring, but remember, fair cuts both ways. Fair is not merciful. Fair is the right hand of justice, not the left hand of mercy. And so do not expect me to make any exceptions for you, regardless of the situation. If you need me to push something back for you, know that I'm not going to. If you need me to cut you some slack, don't assume I'm going to. I might. If you give me a good reason and you've done the things necessary during the course of the semester that suggest to me that that is the right decision to make, to cut you some slack. Sure, I might, but don't assume I'm going to. I'm not that sort of professor. I'm not like I am laissez-faire, but I'm not like, oh, it's all cool. No, I am somebody who cares about your tie being done correctly, your lapels matching your tie, and getting it right. This is what I offer to you, not just hanging out and accepting accepting something below your capacities. I am somebody that wants you to reach your capacities, and this takes some discomfort. So I will push you towards that. Just a couple personal notes so you understand a little bit about where I'm coming from. I'm myself in 2 PhD programs. I'm a PhD candidate in comparative literature, as well as a student in the political science program. I don't know of anybody else at LSU that's done that. I also am a high-level athlete. I was a college baseball player. I continue to be a high-level athlete. I run ultra marathons. I'm a USS strongman national competitor. So I've qualified for nationals. It's actually a competition a week that I thought about doing, but I'm not trained up for it, where I'd be able to qualify for the world. So I'd be a world-class athlete were I to do that. And so those are just a couple things about me. I read 8 languages: Latin, Greek, a little bit of classical, Arabic, Spanish, French, German, Italian, English, a little bit of Middle English, not really Old English. And so I am somebody that cares about developing skill and meeting and transcending expectations. Very much do I not want to hit the bottom mark, but the top mark, and I would want the same for you. So let's take a look at these open dots here. Please do not show up to the class more than 5 minutes. Like, it's very disruptive. I show up often like a minute or two before class. I launch into lecture, start talking. So second thing, please conclude discussions. I had a couple students last semester that really, right where you are, there was a then visible, but now invisible student. They would just talk and talk. And I would come in, I would be start my lecture, and then they would give me this look like, what are you doing? And it's like, I'm part of the $20,000 that people are paying here. I'm part of the show. What are you doing? And so, unfortunately, we don't have ushers to remove rude students. But in any case, I don't think that will be necessary here. But do make sure that I don't have to act like a high school teacher and remind you to be quiet or to put your phone away. I will do it if I have to. It annoys me when students don't follow the rules, when I can clearly see them, and I'm like 7 feet away from them. And so please do not require that I do that. And I'm not asking for, I would say, very much. I'm asking for the standard, as it were, not extra standard when it comes to focus. But many of you who stay in the class, I think, will find that it is hard not to focus if you're truly interested in this. And you'll see that I'm very passionate. And I'll tell you, I mentioned something about my official evaluations and my unofficial evaluations. This is very important to keep in mind. And you can look up the unofficial ones. What I tend to read in my course evaluations are hard grader, life-changing class. So you really have to hedge your bets here. Do you want to have the sort of class that transforms your thinking, transforms your life, that stays with you for the rest of your life, also gives you not just what I have to say, but what these great masterpieces have to say? Works that influence your thinking, that change your life, change your being, perhaps change your being for the better. This is a transformative class. If you let it be, you have to put in the work, like a training protocol. If I give you this awesome swimming training protocol, but then you get no physical benefits and don't improve in swimming because you didn't do the training, is that the fault of the training protocol? No. Same thing with this class. You must go through the class. You must do the things required by the class to get the effect. And if you don't want that effect, then I would recommend take a class that offers less. But if you want a class that offers more, will take more of your time, will take more of your energy, will offer you a transformative experience. Literally is being offered by the professor. And many of your peers have suggested in their evaluations that, wow, this class is amazing. Wow, this is the best professor I've ever had. I've seen that many times. Then take the class. But if you're going to be like some of the other evaluations that say, wow, this is a really insightful class, but man, he grades tough. 3 out of 5. And you should know that. You should know that. So if you want a class where you're like, I care a lot less about the inside, I care a lot more about the grade, this is probably not the best class for you. You can get an A, I promise you that, but I do not want you to have the wrong idea about how this class works, what it is that I offer. So 8 times we will have forum discussions, seminars, Socratic seminars. Probably all of you have done something like this before, but maybe not. I've had students in the past refuse to move, refuse to help make a circle. If you're going to refuse to do that, this is not a good class. I need you all to be sociable and civil in this class. This is a nice place, as it were. We're not in a back alley. We are not at odds with each other. We are not enemies to each other. You are my students. I am your instructor. This is a very positive, almost paternal relationship, regardless of how you feel about your maternal or paternal, your actual paternal and maternal relationships. We're expected to be a good community here, to be friendly with each other. So please do as I ask. I will not ask you to do more than you are capable of. And if you have some disability that keeps you from helping, let me know so that I do not make unreasonable requests of, or if your hand is hurting. Fine. Another thing that I really find important, I find that most students with laptops do not do this. I need you to actually focus on the class when you have a laptop. I need you to only have open a word processor, maybe the book, maybe my slides. If I come through and I see you're on Facebook, you're writing an essay for accounting, you don't even have anything out, I'll ask you, I'll be like, you need a sheet of paper, you need to close this, I'll give you a sheet of paper. I won't be mean about it, but I'll be firm. I need you to focus on my class for the 50 minutes that you're here. You're here for what, 150 minutes a week? How many minutes are in a week? How many minutes are in a day? A lot more than 150. So while you're here, it's a training session. It's not supposed to be the most fun you have. We have a lazy river here at LSU. We have SEC football. We have spectacularly fun things to do. I know this is not fun, but this is what you came here to do as far as I'm concerned. You came here to learn. You came here to train. You came here to become a professional. This is part of your professional development. So I take this very seriously, and I assume that you take this very seriously as well. There are 3 essays during the course of the semester. The vast majority of your grade is based on these essays. Note 20, 30, 35%, that's 50, 85% of your grade comes from essays. So if you cannot write, you're afraid of writing, and you don't want to risk your grade being based on your writing, you need to think about it. If you know you need to improve your writing and are willing to put in the work, this is an excellent class for you. If you think you have excellent writing, love reading, and think, okay, this is exactly what I want, then this is a good class for you. But know that your grade will be based on attendance. Quizzes that are part of your attendance grade will sometimes take the place of your attendance. Sometimes I'll take attendance at the beginning of the day. Sometimes I'll take it at the end. Sometimes I'll give you a pop quiz at the beginning. Sometimes I'll give it at the end. Though I wouldn't expect to do this, if someday after spring break, there are 3 students in here, you might expect that I'm going to give a pop quiz on some day like that. So do your best to help everyone else out by being here as frequently as possible. Note that the prelude paper, that's your first paper, the introductory paper, is worth less than the midterm, which is worth less than the final. This is because I expect you to do better and better work. And so if you find yourself with something, and this is more of a math science sort of convention, if you find yourself with, say, a B in this class after your first 2 papers, you got, say, a C+ on your first one, a B+ on your second, can you still get an A in this class? Yes, yes. If you get an A on the final paper, I will definitely take that huge, in a huge way, usually, into consideration for you. Whatever your best score is at the end, what your score is on the final paper is most representative of your skill. So if you get an A and just had a B in the course, you might get an A in the course. Probably more like a B+, A-, but maybe an A if you get an A+. So always know that that is possible. But I wouldn't rely on that because remember, most students don't make the diagonal up, but do the little dip. And so know thyself. Gnothi auton, the Greeks would say to you. How's it that the Romans say it? They say nosce te ips. All right, note the grade scale, know that we have A+, minuses, all of that. Out of class expectations, make sure to read those yourself. But I say to read, write, do the things necessary. There's one last thing I want to say to you, and then I'm going to let you go. Make sure that you look at the calendar. One thing about this calendar is do the readings for the day they are listed prior to the day. So Introduction to Don Quixote prologue, chapters 1 to 8, I expect to be read by Friday. So on Friday, you might have a pop quiz on that. On Wednesday, you might have a pop quiz on your syllabus. So make sure to read the syllabus prior to the first session and second session. I know I didn't post it until this morning. Review the MLA sample paper and the prelude paper topics. Might I give a quiz on this on Wednesday? Maybe I could. I've given you fair warning. But know that know what you need to know that you should stay in contact with me, and know whether you want to take this course or not. Also note the days that you don't have class. There are a few of them for when I have 2 conferences this semester. And so I'll be gone at the end of January for the Texas Medieval Association. I'll be gone near the end of March at the Renaissance Society of America in Boston, doing something with Shakespeare Society Association of America, as well as Harvard is putting on this Medieval Academy of America at the moment. It's a huge one. If you have any additional questions, please come see me. That is the class. You are free to go. I look forward to seeing many of you on, though not all of you, on Wednesday.
Excuse me.
Yes.